Welcome to this online learning presentation for video editing for beginners with Adobe Premiere Rush. This is video 1 of 3. The aim of this content is for you to feel confident with Rush, to create effective and engaging videos yourself. Now let's begin by taking a look at what we'll be covering in the entire course. So during this workshop we will look at a checklist of what you'll need. We will talk about video ingredients. We will learn how to create a new project using Rush. Then we'll look at editing on the timeline. When we feel comfortable with all the tools for editing, we'll then look at how to export and upload your finished video. Then towards the end we'll look at other editing software options, and I'll share some of my tips and tricks that I've picked up over the years and some of my favourite websites for editing resources. Let's get into it. I thought I'd just start with some of the statistics about the rise of video consumption. Stats like mobile video consumption rises by 100% every year. YouTube is the second most popular website after Google. You may have seen in the media Facebook talking about their site being mostly video in the future. So hopefully those stats make you feel good about putting some time in to learn about video editing. But I chose this quote on the screen because I think it really explains the why behind the rise of videos. So using video to connect with a prospect is so much more than a cold call. It humanizes the selling process. So basically that's about people like to be entertained, and video is a good way of doing that. It doesn't feel as much hard work as reading 10 pages of copy. You can summarize things really quickly using both visuals and words. So let's just check you've got everything you'll need for this training. So there are the 3 supplied training videos. You're obviously doing pretty well because you're using video 1 right now. Then you have the supplied PDF, which is the same as what I'm talking to on the screen at the moment. I encourage you to print yours out and scribble all over it and make notes. Link the descriptions to the screenshots so you can remember what everything is. Then throughout we'll be stopping for you to do some activities and to practice what you've just learnt. So for that I'd like you to have some landscape interview footage and some landscape accompanying B-roll footage. So if that sounds a little bit confusing, I just want you to think about maybe a news broadcast where you've got the reporter on location talking about breaking news and they're giving their interview, and then it cuts away to shots of what's actually happening. I've requested landscape footage just because that's what I'll mostly be working with my examples. However, one of the pros of Adobe Premiere Rush is that it's really great working with either landscape or vertical videos. So it's not such a big one, but to start with it might be good just to have all similar footage. So if you can, landscape to begin with. Then a logo is great because you'll often be putting these in your videos. One with a transparent background lets you place it on top of another image. A tip for you, if you're ever getting logos designed, request that the designer creates not only logos for different platforms such as a Facebook icon or for Instagram, all the different dimensions that you need, but also ones for video where they have this transparent background so you can place it on cool shots. I've also put here a royalty-free or licensed music track. That's just a good habit of sourcing a music track for your video. However, Adobe Premiere Rush does have some free options in their software, so don't worry too much if you can't find one. Just maybe if you had a particular piece of music that you really wanted to edit to. And then to finish, sort of allow yourself 3 to 4 hours to chip away at this content at your own pace. When I do it in a workshop, It is about 4 hours including questions. However, the beauty of you doing it online means you can do it whenever, wherever it fits in with your own schedule. So let's look at what video ingredients there are. I thought I'd start with this because it's a good habit to get into, especially when you start to make more videos. Things can get messy fast and you can lose assets really quickly. So this is an easy file structure for you to do for each video project. When you use advanced editing software, if you move your footage from its original location, you can break the link to the software, which causes an error on the timeline and for it to disappear. So you really want to avoid that. So it's just a really good habit to decide at the start where you want your footage to be saved and just keep it there. So the first ingredient is footage. This is obviously moving footage, but it can also include any photos that you have that you'd like to include in the video. Next up is audio. So with a lot of the footage that you will be using, your audio will be synced. So your audio will actually be attached to the footage and be in the footage folder. However, in your audio folder, you can store any non-synced audio, so that includes music, voiceovers, sound effects, and you can also put any music license agreements into this folder for future reference. Lastly, we have graphics. That's where you can keep your logo and perhaps any brand guidelines that you have. When you get a bit more advanced, you might save some external titles or special effects into this folder also. Now for an activity, I would like you to file the assets that you have ready for this workshop, and I want you to put them into this file structure and save them onto a safe location in your computer. So now we're going to get into Rush and create a new video editing project. I would like you to watch what I do, and then at the end you'll get to practice yourself. So let's open up Adobe Premiere Rush. So I'm a Mac user, so what I will be doing is going down to my Finder, off the screen, going to my applications, looking for Premiere Rush, and then opening it. If you are a Microsoft Windows user, you will use your Start button to then look through your software and look for Rush in there. If you've had Rush open previously, you will be able to see the logo on your desktop, and you just double click to open that. So when Rush opens for you, this is what you will see. They make it really easy with a big Create a New Project button. Over here is where any previous projects that you've been working on will be, and if you wanted to open one of them, you would just double click on it. However, we want to create a new project, so we'll do that. I'm going to quickly name my project, keep it tidy, tutorial, and now I'm going to locate my footage. And even though I don't recommend keeping your footage on the desktop, I'm just doing it for this workshop. But here we go, all nicely organized because we've done that already. Now what I can do is I just need to select the clips that I want. I know I want everything for this, so I'm just going to select everything. If you wanted different shots though, you could just go through like that. And then if you change your mind, you just go and click on them again. You see that it's giving them a number. That's just the order that they're going to appear in your project. But you don't really need to worry too much about the numbering, because you can arrange the footage however you like once you're in there. Down here is a summary of what's about to go into your project, and then to import it and bring it in, we simply click Create. And once it's prepared it, we will now see the editing screen inside Adobe Premiere Rush. And here is all our footage, waiting for us to edit it. So now it's your turn. I want you to open up Rush on your computer and create a new project like I just did, and import everything from your footage folder. So now we are looking at the user interface of Adobe Premiere Rush. I encourage you to watch what I do and then to take notes on your handout and to label things as we go. Before we jump into the software, I just want to show you this image on the handout. This is what a traditional editing timeline looks like. So you've got the timeline center here, then everything above is the visuals, and then everything below is the audio. Sometimes with beginner software it doesn't always look like that, but this is traditionally what editors will work with. And you can see with the visuals that things are layered, and what is on top is what will show in the video. So this layering is for things like you have a clip here, but then maybe there's a title above it, maybe there's a logo that stays on screen for the entire video. So if that was the case, you'd have the logo like right across here for the duration of the video. So you can see you can stagger things and add shots on top of shots and titles on top of shots, and that's what makes your video really interesting and start to stand out. But let's now jump into Adobe Premiere Rush. Okay, so here is the editing user interface for Adobe Premiere Rush. So let's have a look around, but first I just want to have a little disclaimer about the footage that I've used for this tutorial. So this was shot from a brand shoot for my business. So primarily we were capturing still shots, and then the photographer videographer, in between stills, she would grab a little video clip that I could use for my marketing as well. These little video clips are what you see on the screen. You'll see a couple of the finished still shots as well. But the video clips, they're really raw. I haven't done anything to them yet. A lot of them are a bit out of focus, but moving around a lot. And the reason I've chosen to use this type of footage is because as a beginner, that is probably the type of footage that you'll be working with. Sometimes you watch tutorials and they're using footage that looks like they've already done a bit of editing and polishing too, but I just wanted you guys to see what it's like to actually work with raw footage. With that said, now let's have a tour around. So down the bottom we have our timeline, nice and easy to look at. We've got a scroll bar so we can move and see the timeline here. Now we've also over here got some editing options that we will look at in detail a bit later, but we can see I've expanded so I can see more of the audio tracks. I'll close that down, and this one here, let me see the synced audio. So you can see these ones didn't have audio, but these ones did. Now up here is the preview window. This is what you'll see in your final video. So as you play your video on your timeline, that's what the preview window is showing you. Now we've got these traditional play buttons. Sorry about that loud synced audio there. Play buttons, fast forward, rewind, and then you just saw me earlier. You can also move through your video with this playhead, and then you can see the time that I'm here on the timeline is also represented by this blue dot. So as I move the playhead, you'll see the dot moving as well. Another good thing to know is you've got durations here. So this first duration is the current time in the video, and the second duration is the overall time of the video. This one's a good one to pay attention to, because if your aim is to make a 60-second or a 15-second video for social media, then you will want to stick to that, so you don't want to over edit, have too many clips. So keep an eye on that. Then over here we've got a couple of other options. So you've got full screen, you can make your video loop. So probably the coolest one is orientation. This is a feature that even my advanced editing system doesn't have. So it gives me the option to create a video in landscape, which it currently is, as you can see there's a little tick, but I can also create it as portrait or square, which means I can create a video that is portrait for a story or square for Instagram. And this is a really cool feature. So if I quickly just change it to portrait, you can see it's that vertical shape, and if I click here you can see it's that Instagram looking shape. For this workshop I'm going to stick to landscape, but that's probably the number one reason to use Premiere Rush, is that you've got this cool option. With my advanced editing software I need to make a video in landscape and then I make another copy of it and then I have to resize it all down to a square shape. So the fact that Rush gives you this option is amazing, so take advantage of it. One thing to keep in mind is you want to decide on your orientation at the very start of your editing, because you will be fitting your shots to the shape that you're editing with. So when you have square, for instance, it means you're going to lose a bit of the edge of the clip. So when you're deciding on what clips to use, you might have to not choose a particular clip because you maybe are going to lose quite a key part of the action. I'm going to stick to landscape, as I said, and the reason for that is that has been traditionally, up until very recently, the main way that videos appear. It still is the main way that videos usually appear on websites. It's the main orientation for YouTube still at the current time of filming it is. So we're going to do landscape. My footage is landscape, so that's what we'll do today. So the next term is a rather weird one, as it's usually referred to as the bin. No, it's not where you put what you don't want. In fact, it's the opposite. The bin is where you keep all your project and media assets you want to have the option of working with. So often editing software doesn't put your assets straight onto the timeline. More advanced ones, you have your bin and you slowly review your footage and you add it to the timeline as you go, but beginner ones, they drop it onto the timeline straight away to make it easier. But the step before that is you have your bin where you keep your assets. So you can see the footage that we brought in earlier is here, and from here I can add the clip onto my timeline. It's already there though, so I won't do that. Then above that bin we've got a plus sign. That's where I can add in additional media. So if I'm looking through my bin and I'm like, oh, I don't have my logo, I'll go up here, go media. You can have, so there's a menu here. The best option to see as much as possible is media browser. So I can see my desktop and I can see some of my other documents, and later it has some soundtracks and stuff that we'll talk about. So I'm going to locate my logo and my music track that I didn't bring in earlier. So they're on my desktop. They're in this workshop footage, audio. Here's my audio track that I filed with our file structure. I click on that because I want it, and it's going to add it to the project. So not only has it added it to the bin, it's actually also added it straight onto the timeline also, and it added it where my playhead was sitting. So if you want to be really organized, you can place your playhead where you want it to sit, but it doesn't really matter because you can move all this around later. So we'll just quickly go back and add again media browser, desktop. Now I'm looking for, we'll add both of these. And you can see they're both in the timeline again, and they will both be in the bin. There they are. So that's your bin and your add media area. To get rid of your bin, you simply just click on the bin and it's gone, and you've just got your preview window and your timeline again. Now up here is the home button that takes us back to our start screen we were talking about earlier. To get back in my project, I simply click on the one that we've called tutorial. We can see we're on the edit screen here, it's underlined, where there's also the share section, which we'll talk about later when we get to exporting and sharing our video with the world, but for now we're staying in this edit user interface. Across here we have the name of the sequence that we're working in, so I'm in sequence 1. As a beginner you don't need to worry about that too much. Advanced editors will work with multiple sequences as they make adjustments, but know that you do have the option with Rush to do different sequences, and this is where you'd know which sequence you're working in. But you can just choose to ignore it for now. Here's a really handy undo button, and then over here is a lot of our adjustment features that will go into a lot of detail later. Things like titles and cropping and colour, so that's where those are. Over here at the top we have the traditional additional menu. So you have some options up here. If I click on the clip, there'll be a couple of options to split, duplicate, delete and things like that, and the very important undo button. So that's also where you can make some choices. So now we have an activity. I would like you to explore the user interface features, and when you are ready, import the music and graphics that we did not bring in earlier, like I just showed you. So that brings us to the end of video 1 of 3. I will see you in video 2.